There we are.
How things?
Yeah, not too bad. I've been having a a bit of a rest. I've come off the pace considerably. I got back to Sweden a I don't know when it was now, a couple of weeks ago, and I've been just doing a little bit of I don't know what you call it, really um, catching up, tying up some loose ends. A bunch of admin, just having a recap really. Because I've had such an extraordinarily busy year, particularly the last 6 months. But actually, it's pretty much the whole year, really. But it's just the pace just has built and built through the year. And when I saw you on the Wednesday in London, which was great, wasn't it? It was a really, really wonderful evening we all had. And I came That was the Wednesday, and I came back on the Monday to Sweden. Or no, actually, when did I fly back? I think I flew back on the Sunday. Um, or was it the Saturday? I can't remember. But anyway, I think I've been back about 2 weeks. Um, honestly, I've just little details of that really bugged me. I don't know what's wrong with me. Anyway, let's just so that I'm not distracted. Let me just look at my calendar here and figure out when it was that I did come back. Yeah, that's right. So I flew back on the Saturday, and we're now on a Saturday. So I have been back 2 weeks today. Um, and so and it's been a good 2 weeks in terms of just coming back down through the gears and getting ready for Christmas. So we've got a birthday celebration for my daughter today. She was 19 on the 16th. Yes, and so she's got a new flat in the local town, and it's a combined birthday party and sort of a housewarming. Um, I mean, that's a long story all on its own, really. Um, and then Christmas Eve is when they do Christmas over here. Uh, and then I'm thinking about when I come back to the UK. Um, one of my cousins is over from Australia, and I'd quite like to be in Wales. So I might fly back either on the 27th, the 28th, or the 29th, and come to the UK for a couple of weeks, or maybe even just a week, because January next year is going to be very, very busy business wise. But this where I'm getting to, Ranjan, is that I went back into business, as you know, in at the end of 2019 into 2020, and then started doing that, and then all the lockdowns and stuff happened. If you And then that went on for 2 years. Then the Ukraine war started, and the first year that the Ukraine war started, uh, caused a sort of a continue of the hiatus that 2021 represented. Then 22 into 23. 23 was just a great big hiatus. Then at the beginning of 24, when I came back in the new year in 24, that was on a mission, part of the same thing I've been doing, building this company to build affordable homes. And through 23, it became apparent that, it just wasn't really a possibility. But then through 24, things started to open up a bit. But at the beginning of 24, I was actually looking to take up a position quite a senior position, building affordable homes in Wales for a local authority. Now, they didn't get their funding, so I couldn't do that. But part of what I did at the end of 23 and the beginning of 24 was did a lot of work on the Procurement Act 2023. And why that's relevant is the Procurement Act 2023 in the UK is replicated across the world and is tied to the World Trade Organization, international trade treaties, and all the rest of it. And basically their central bank regulations and World Bank, IMF, Bank of International Settlement type rules that literally govern what governments can do in terms of government investment in services. Let's call them services. And services covered by what I would call the social contract. And the social contract was something that evolved in the 19th century into the beginning of the 20th century, then through the 20th century, particularly post Second World War. But in the run up to the First World War, post First World War, Homes for Heroes, post Second World War, the reforming government, Attlee's government that came in after the Second World War, and in the US, it was things like the New Deal after the Great Depression, which was post First World War, whatever. So all of a piece, okay, to understand where we are now, all of that stuff needs to be recapped. And what I've been doing the last couple of weeks is doing that recapping exercise. And my blog this morning is sort of what and well, the blogs I've done the last couple of weeks are the reduction, if you like, of all of the reference points I take from my 15 years of very deep study into all of this stuff. You know, and so today's blog, I think, has kind of, I feel like I've caught up. And I think I've said before, you know, the process that I've been going through and the last couple of weeks is something which I've done over the last 15 years several times. And rather than paying any attention to the news cycle, which is basically just the narrative, which is basically a narrative of lies or exaggerations, etc., and try and look back in a kind of a Hansel and Gretel sort of way at the trail of, you know, breadcrumbs, as it were, of, you know, what were significant events. And we're right in the middle of a new attempted narrative, okay? And that new attempted narrative is what I've tried to encapsulate with a little help from Monica on ChatGPT today in my blog. Now, shall I do let me just do a screen share, look. Which one am I going to share here now? This one here. Right, so is that your end, my screen share?
Hasn't, no.
It's interesting. Why would that? Calling started. Stop sharing. That's still not coming up, is it? That's very strange.
Oh, yeah,
it is there now, is it?
yeah. It looks like I think I can see Ezra Pound.
You can indeed. So I pinned him to the top of my feed in my Substack. Now, the reason I've done that is that goes through the series of books that Ezra Pound recommends, which is the Square Dollar series. Okay, which
did some of that with Marshall McLuhan, I think.
Right. Well. Anyway, so that's what that blog is about, and I did that on May the 17th. And what I did at the first half of this year was I went through all of my blogs. There were over 2,000 blogs that I did between 2011 and 2019, 20. Then I blogged quite a lot through COVID. Contric 19, whatever. And then the Substack, I started doing the Substack at the beginning of 2023. So I'll just open this one here. So, right, the price of liberty, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off, right? And then I've put Elon Musk buying democracy one government at a time, because the Elon Musk personality cult is unbelievably more prevalent, certainly in the different feeds that come to me through YouTube, my Google feed, the Chrome feed, all the feeds that we all get, which are highly curated and designed, I think, to bamboozle. They're designed to make us all think we're onto something, and to herd us into polarities to support the polemic, and the narratives that you get in the news cycle are polemics, and a polemic argument is setting two sides in opposition to each other. And the point of doing that is it's the Hegelian dialectic, where you have thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and the synthesis is the narrative of the polemic, which is basically the parasitical billionaire class trying to pull a fast one on the body politic, the polity, individuals in the generality. Now, the billionaire class, I think we need to make a distinction of what they are, who they are. And essentially, it is the billionaire class that is the oligarchy. Okay. Now, the corporate world, underneath the cult of personality, particularly around Trump, okay, the corporate world is fascism is almost a different species of totalitarianism. The totalitarianism under a tech personality cult under Elon Musk, I think, would be even more dystopian than the corporate fascism. And corporate fascism is terrible, absolutely awful. But at the current juncture, what I've been getting to is, right, okay, what is happening here? What is it all about? And when I started my Substack, I did actually, here it is, what's it all about? Okay, I've got an RLD, a Roger Lewis Substack, which I started doing in January 2023. So this is 2 years ago. And if you remember, it was through 2023, at the end of 2022, that the basically commercial world in the real economy ran into a brick wall, not just strong headwinds, but an absolute brick wall. Okay. And so the heading on this page, monopoly. I mean, I can't see my page coming up on your screen. Yeah, I can. But so there we are. There's the Monopoly board, and Tim Gielen's film Monopoly is very good. But And I asked the question, is millenarianism a safe and effective vaccine against militancy? Now, millenarianism is catastrophism. Difficult word to say. Catastrophism, okay. And eschatology is the study of end times in religious doctrine, okay. Now, catastrophism and millenarianism and eschatology, okay, are all man-made things. And I would argue, as a religious man, that they have nothing to do with God's law. They've got everything to do with the priestly class or a cult of personality, a first among equals with the billionaire parasitic class, okay, telling everybody else what is a good belief, what is a bad belief, right? What is a good libertarian, a bad libertarian, a good Christian, a bad Christian, a good Jew, a bad Jew, a good Muslim, a bad Muslim, right? Now, and all of these polarities in the polemic, and the polemic being, remember, the thesis and the antithesis, okay, that sets up then the narrative, which is the divide and rule, and the divide and rule, which I goes back to Babylonian times and all the rest of it. So, which predate, things like the Republic with Plato, or Aristotle's politics, right? Or Spinoza's politics as well. I mean, they're thinking down the ages across time, and in what say if we call the Enlightenment times or after the Industrial Revolution. So there's this theme of an owning class, an overclass, dominating the belief systems of everybody else, is, well, but it basically boils down to 1984 and Brave New World. But today, what I've said is, let's have a look at Animal Farm, because Animal Farm isn't mentioned that often these days. But Animal Farm is actually the better synthesis of, if the thesis is 1984 and the antithesis is Brave New World, I would say that something like Animal Farm is the synthesis, but other synthesis with a different polemic, you would end up something like The Republic of Oceania by Harrington, or perhaps you'd end up with Queen Mab, which is the epic poem by Shelley. Now, at times in the past, when the polity or the general public have smelt a rat, okay, they have resorted to samizdat, say in Soviet Russia, and the satellite states of the Soviet Union.
Right, that independent publishing, underground publishing.
Samizdat is underground publishing, yeah, unauthorized publishing or whatever. And of course, so pamphleteering in the English Civil War and the run up to that, or whatever, the invention of the printing press, or all of those sorts of things, are the democratization of knowledge, right? Where Thomas Paine's Common Sense, things like this. So what happens when that happens? What has enabled it? And it's an awakening, if you will, against the lies. It's a realization that a con has occurred, right? Now, what's happening in this, a con has occurred and it has been called out, but is Elon Musk a speaker of truth, or is he a parasitic billionaire? I would say is a parasitic billionaire. Where does the dynamic between Donald Trump and Elon Musk fit into that? So what I've tackled today is that the old joke about when I grow up, I want to be rich. I don't want to go into politics. I want to buy a politician. And so my headline today is, well, buying a government one day at a time. Now, the simple fact is the PayPal mafia are now in control of a narrative that places themselves at the center of the narrative as this heroic truth-seeking class, when in fact they're nothing but parasites who are capitalizing on an enshittified internet which they monopolize, and using that position actually to further despoil the personal wealth of other citizens within the polity. I mean, talking in those terms, they're sort of the terms that one has to talk about, fitting it into the academic structure of how these things are studied. And again, I make the point that the impoverishment of language, the twisting of language, Animal Farm, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, 2 legs good, 4 legs bad. Okay, so I end my blog today with chapter 10 of Animal Farm, okay, which I think is more or less where we are. Now, Catherine Austin Fitts did a very good interview with one of the authors of Hijacking Bitcoin, which was written by a guy, Roger Ver. Now, Roger Ver used to be something called a Bitcoin maximalist, I think. And when I was very much involved in particularly smart contracts and the Ethereum blockchain, I found Roger Ver a bit annoying, but he's written this book that Catherine Austin Fitts has reviewed. I haven't read the book myself yet. I will read it. But a lot of what they discussed in the interview is a lot of stuff that's quite familiar to me. And I've done 2 blogs about that interview, and the main blogs that I did about Web3 cryptocurrencies, not so much the Web3 stuff I've written about. Now, what it all reduces down to, though, is what solutions are being put forward by the despoiling billionaire parasite class led by Elon Musk, who's a crony capitalist. Okay, what are they looking to do? And I've referred back to David's set of blogs in 2014, which are actually called Peak Collateral. And this is a theme which Catherine Austin Fitts actually hits upon. Now, how one measures wealth, the wealth is the wealth. How you measure it is a choice, and the choice of measuring it in a fixed supply of money is deflationary, etc. The other thing I was looking at last night was the Real Currencies blog, Anthony Miguel's, which is something I've looked at over the years. But I think he tends to concentrate more on an eschatological analysis based upon end times in the Bible and stuff like that, which I find those narratives equal as bogus as Musk's narratives about the current shutdown in the United States. I mean, they're talking about government shutdown again, right? Starmer, he's talking about, there's a big black hole in the public accounts in the UK. And then, blow me, last night, another car drives into a Christmas market in Magdeburg, okay, in Germany. Well, I mean, this is a replay. It's on replay. Deja vu. So at the beginning of this blog here, I've actually got a link to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young's song Deja Vu. Now, yes, we have been here before, but it's still just a great big tall story is the point, right? So, okay, forget all of that. What do we need to be looking at? What is the diagnosis? And my blog today is sort of just a bunch of links between these things. And then I asked ChatGPT to look at some of the binaries or polarities. So, for instance, I made some notes this morning on my phone. Peak collateral, PayPal mafia, and then there used to be a joke about a child whose ambition when they grew up was to become wealthy so they could buy with their own politician. This used to be a joke. The same vein of humor inspired a class of memes where politicians became advertising platforms with sponsored patches, much like racing drivers and their logo infested racing suits. Do you remember those memes? Yeah. So the new innovation in politics has become a bifurcation, it seems, the less well-off by the presidency, while the truly Croesus-esque by governments, lock, stock and barrel, right? Now, and then here are some examples. Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance, Larry Fink and Keir Starmer, Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Odd dynamic there. What the fuck's going on? In history, Prescott Bush and Adolf Hitler, Rupert Murdoch and Tony Blair, Bill Gates and the World Health Organization. This is a game that everyone can play. I'm sort of saying, you think
Ted Turner did it with the United Nations.
Ted Turner, yeah. Well, there's another one. So my own takeaway is that keeping corporate money out of politics, the Citizen United case, is still a priority. Musk's innovation of leveraging a crony capitalist fortune into a cult of personality is even more dangerous. They're proceeding straight to Maoism, but Muskism, cutting out the intermediate step of state monopoly capitalism. Let's forget about fascism and go straight to a Maoist cult of personality around Chairman Musk. That's what seems to be happening here. So there's a starter for 10, and then so I asked ChatGPT to give me a thread on this. So the Enshittification of truth from going direct to digital Babel, and you've got a blog called the Pedagogy of the Digitally Oppressed. Never, ever since we've been talking has been more of a better time for you to put the flesh on that bone. So of course that's a pun on the Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire, and I'm quite fond of his quote from that book on manipulation and of how the owning class, the parasite class, like Musk, manipulate the masses in different ways, and it's a little known, little studied book these days. I think mainly because I think Freire was a Marxist. I personally, I think he's more libertarian than Musk or Thiel or any of them put together. So liberation theology, what is liberty? It's being liberated. And what do you have to do? What do you have to engage in to achieve liberty? Well, it's liberation, and liberation theology and the liberation which Freire gives his advice on those seeking liberation, does rely on a Marxist analysis of capitalism, but the prognosis, I think the prescription doesn't, similar to Bakunin, does not prescribe some form of authoritarian communism. So it's really the difference between authoritarianism and libertarianism, and the correct lens to look at both of those polarities with is actually the lens of free will or determinism, and so and these open up a whole bunch of other philosophical, political, economy questions, not questions in pure economics, because economics as a standalone enterprise outside of a political lens is just a nonsense. So, and one final thing, because I know I've gone on a bit. There's a guy called Sutherland who's the he's high up at Ogilvy and Mather, and I've listened to a couple of his talks recently. It was one of them was sent to me actually by a colleague because he's talking about why there aren't enough affordable homes, but he also talks about the psychology of selling and stuff like that. And he's from us. He's a Welshman and a very engaging chap at that. So he's one of my lot, one of my countrymen. But you know, there's a real sort of I felt quite an affinity with what he was saying. Um, but there you go. Anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at.
What was he saying? He was saying that houses are not affordable selling. So
oh well, basically, he's basically saying it's become financialized and you know they're basically mispriced. So the price discovery mechanism in he says some stuff about capitalism which I don't agree with, but effectively housing is priced now as an asset as part of the monetary system, and it's not actually priced as a consumer good, you know, as shelter for humans. So it's actually priced as an end in itself and as a financialized commodity end, as opposed to actually something that's has a value in use. And again, those are kind of quite Marxist economics type analysis terms, but it's impossible to. This is part of the.
He's saying that housing has become like a currency, right? It's itself. It basically it goes up.
Well, I wouldn't want to put words into his mouth. I'll put a link to both of his talks in if we put this video up, which we probably will.
It sounds like you were referring to the idea of it no longer being a simple good. I think I'm just repeating what you said. That it's no longer a simple good. It's instead like a haven.
Well, when we started talking about this in 2020, do you remember you said about the term cash boxes in the sky? And we were looking at the pressure group that was talking about that. Can you remember what they were called?
Yeah, my friend, the guy who I buy books off, it works for the empty homes. Pretty vacant, wasn't it?
Pretty vacant, that's it. Fantastic report. Yeah.
He's actually going back to America.
Oh right, okay. But I like reaching out to these people in the common, you know, the modern parlance. I drew a spectacular blank with both them and with the other chap, in the one that's moved to America, moved to South America. That
Architects for Social Housing.
Yes, Ash. Yeah. And again, you see, this is part of the problem with the polemic with the divide and rule.
That guy's gone completely fucking crazy. He's become very, very, very. Well, I say crazy. I mean, just different sources. He's become very, very anti-immigrant, despite.
Do you know that's what this is all about, Ranjan? In terms of the divide and rule, I've been listening quite carefully to quite a lot of the institutional racism which is being pushed out through, you know, through the BBC, but also through GB News, basically everywhere on different parts of it. But I listened to a thing yesterday from a guy that isn't on GB News anymore, an Australian bloke, Dan something is he called?
Dan Woodson, fucking hell.
Fucking hell. Anyway, he was talking about, he interviewed Tommy Robinson, not his real name, in wherever, whatever nick he's in at the moment. And the person that carried out this killing of those children in the dance class, the Taylor Swift dance class, right? he was saying, oh, he's openly practicing his Muslim faith. Now, as if
he's not Muslim.
Well, apparently that's not true, and apparently even Farage has said that around that event there's like this massive cover-up going on. Now, I don't know, I haven't studied it. I mean, anyone that kills children at a dance class, you know, there's not strong enough words to condemn such an absolutely heinous act,
Yeah.
right? Now, it's the general smearing of such an act with the word Muslim, and not actually there's no nuance, there's no context to that. It is insult. I mean, I find it deeply insulting to my brother Muslims. You know, as someone of
one
you
of
know,
the conspiracy theories that I've seen shared, like one of my friends shared this one with me, and another friend told me that he'd heard about this one, is that Keir Starmer was the kid's father's lawyer, as if they would still be in contact and living in each other's pockets. So that was one story that I met.
but hold on, when did it actually happen? Because Keir Starmer's been in politics for a long time. So
he's only been in politics for 10 years, actually not a long time.
Yeah, but that Taylor Swift thing didn't happen 10 years ago. It only happened last year or whenever it was.
To make it sound as though this guy's got a line to Keir Starmer and it's all connected, it's all been covered up.
Like I said, I haven't looked at it, and I somehow suspect that the actual facts of the matter aren't what's important. It's the overall that it is divisive, that someone will pick a side and then argue the toss without actually knowing the intricate or important details. So the other thing in that at the moment is the BBC is kind of running on getting rid of juries and stuff like that, right?
Really? Are they?
Well, there's hardly any news on there, but it's all themes. It's like a policy document from the Politburo, the BBC these days.
I mean, I'd like to, if you see anything about that, I'm very interested in seeing it. Yesterday, because yesterday was my final day of work for the year, and believe it or not, in the whole year, because there was a couple of complaints about me in January, so I didn't work that much in January, February in particular. I took a bit of time off, and I actually went to a election with William. But since March, since I've like come back April, I've just steadily like got more hours, not too many. Sometimes I worked everything I was given, but I actually haven't really taken any holiday, hardly any. So yesterday I got a lot of holiday pay as well. But it's been a good year for me. And we were leaving a building in London Bridge yesterday. We're going back to Bloomsbury. And so I had this class. You know, they were the people who were left. There's obviously a lot of turnover. And I said to them, on Thursday, I said, okay, class is over at 11:30. I said, I am going to go to see the Prime Minister at the liaison committee. This is just something that I'm going to do. So if you want to come with me, you can, but I'm not encouraging you. Not work. This is just something that I do, but we're in London. So we went into Parliament to see the liaison committee. We actually ended up in the overflow, which is quite interesting because I remember when Tony Blair gave evidence in Libya, that may have been 2018, and it's the only time he's been back to the Commons. There was an overflow room, there was loads of security. So Thursday we went in, and then in my lesson, so that was interesting. I met a GB News journalist. But then on Friday, I said, should we go to court, Southern Crown Court, because it's around the corner from us? And they said, yeah. I said, well, let's not go to court before 10 o'clock because nothing happened. So we did a simulation of a court case in class and went to the court case. And when we walked in, I could see a British Indian looking with, I can't remember it, but one of those Palestinian scarves. So I said, are any interesting cases happening at the moment? You know, you're obviously here for one. And he said, yeah, there's the Hendon Just Stop Oil 150 people were arrested, and so there's backlog, so that's happening. So I said, okay, cool. What court number is that? Number 12. So I said I'd go to that, and we tried to go to that one, but actually we had to wait for a bit. Instead, we went in and we saw the jury and a victim of police brutality in prison. I couldn't believe it. You know how you have some respect for judges?
Yeah.
Well, as you may remember, I simply don't. I don't think I've ever seen a judge who I thought, okay, I like the cut of your jib. It's just never happened. But I have to say, the other day at the Frontline Club, I went to an Investigating Billionaires talk, and I sat next to a judge afterwards having a drink, and we had a chat. Seemed reasonable. They weren't at work. But the judge yesterday was good. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
He was directing the jury about the police brutality accusations and allegations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. But afterwards...
Excuse me a second. Hello?
When we're going to England, +1.
1:15 now. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, we're supposed to be there by like...
Okay, no problem. Brilliant. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so what was interesting was obviously we couldn't stay there all morning. So we're getting ready to leave before the climate change thing happens, because it wasn't going to happen. But I did hear, when I spoke to some of the climate change activists, I did hear one of them used the name Raj. And I thought, maybe that's Raj Chadha, who I see quoted as a barrister representing activists quite frequently. And so suddenly at one point I looked to my right, and a guy with a brown face and a wig puts his head around the door, nods obviously respectfully to the judge. But he might also be thinking, are you going to fucking get on with it or what?
Yeah.
But he was very respectful and everything like that. And so I said, right, it's time to go. I left. So I go up to him and I said, are you right? I said, I write a blog that no one reads. But, I am interested in what you do, etc. And he said, oh, look, very good. And then I said, is anyone covering this? And he said, not to my knowledge. He gave me his card. His card, you know how they do more than one thing? His card said financial crime and regulation.
Right.
I said, I've had something to do with the people of the Transparency Task Force and stuff like that. He said, oh, very good. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to try and get my head around some of the things that he's doing, because it doesn't always make the paper. I see him in there and just get some of it out. So basically, it was a good year. It was good to see the jury. It was good to see a judge actually giving them what looked like decent directions, because, I just do not presume that happens very frequently. Maybe it does. But that restored a little bit of faith in the system for me. Not in reality itself, but in the system.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm a happy person, actually. Think good and bad things happen. I'm not I don't want to tell everyone to get depressed, but, I compartmentalize. So.
Yeah. Well, I must say, I mean, I regardless of judges being good or bad, I do think a jury, 12 good men and true, or 12 good persons and true, whatever, it's such a fundamental part of English common law, and that it was Blair that brought in the Supreme Court, which is so offensive to the British, the English common law and the British Constitution, as to, it's treasonous, frankly.
May I just say this? May I say this, though? I remember once coming across a pamphlet about the creation of the Supreme Court. I don't know if it was by policy exchange or not, but it basically said one day there was a press release, and at the bottom of the press release they said, by the way, there's going to be a Supreme Court. That's how people found out about it. So it obviously wasn't in any manifesto. And then the other thing
and it was all part of being aligned then to the European Union and all of that sort of thing. So
before the Supreme Court, it was the House of Lords, wasn't it?
It was.
They still fucked up.
Yeah, the House of Lords, though, they were law lords, right? And law lords is a different species of lord, if you will, to both the hereditary House of Lords or even the appointed House of Lords, because the political appointments to the House of Lords are appointment of the great and good, and the law lords is two different things. So there were basically, there was the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and then the House of Lords. And the Court of Appeal had senior judges, I think, who often were lords, but there were three of them in a Court of Appeal case, and in a High Court, in a House of Lords case, I think there were five of them. And then
so it wasn't the House of Lords, it was a subset of the House of Lords.
Indeed, yeah. So it didn't. It wasn't.
I really didn't know that.
Yeah. So the law lords.
That goes back to what you said at the beginning in relation to, you'd much rather have only a few people looking at the actual facts than 400 people looking at really detailed stuff like it was a court case. The
way that the House of Commons is supposed to work with the committee system, so scrutinising legislation put forward by the government, and then the House of Commons, if you're a backbencher and you're not in the government, you're a backbencher. You're still supposed to be holding the government to account, even if you're on the same part, the same party as the government, and so. Committees at the House of Commons are cross-party. They're non-partisan in American.
Well, I mean, the liaison committee that I went to the other day, it was interesting because they were all, it was like the equivalent of Blair's Babes. They were all women, almost. There were maybe one person who wasn't a woman. They were all pretty much
the whole system has been corrupted in the sense that it has been defenestrated. So not necessarily financial corruption. It's been corrupted in the sense that it's been taken away from its ethical and foundational principles. That's what's happened, and it's happened gradually over time. The same thing has happened in the United States with the Congress and the Senate, right? And what has caused that to come about? Well, what has caused that to come about is the species of corporate politicians and professional politicians who have been corrupted in their passage through the academy. So, this whole idea of grooming people for high office, right? Macron is a perfect example, and the French system is highly elitist. They all go to the whatever the conservatoire where they all go to, the political one where he went, and Mitterrand went there as well. I can't even remember what it's called.
The ENACs, les ENAC, yeah, the ENA.
Right. So the point about France, even though they had their revolution, it's still massively elitist, their system, as is the German system, and so it's a system of feudalism, which in Germany it was called the Prussian system, and the Prussian system is the education system that was adopted in the United States at the turn of the 20th century, 19th, 20th century. So the guy that writes about all of that, and you'll find lots of interviews with him that Richard Groves does on Grand Theft World, his podcast, and that's John Taylor Gatto, who's written many books on the American system, but also about the Prussian system. And the Prussian system in and of itself is based on a Platonist system of gold, silver, and bronze classes of human beings. There's a stanza on that in my poem. Usually hell's fuel men's oppressor, but the point about it is that none of it is new, but all of it is retreaded and served up. So in the episode on money in the Galbraith series that David's father made, The Age of Uncertainty, he says that in finance, he said the only innovation is a different name for the same thing. And so it is with tyranny. So it is with this elitist predestination. You know, the you know, the elect, the chosenness, and it's a Calvinist chosenness that, you know, that Zarlenga gets at in the hidden science of money. So yeah, well, but all of these things have come to a head, and there's a really interesting interview that Catherine Austin Fitz uses as an insert into this one about the hijacking of blockchain, when someone is questioning Peter Thiel. Right, and of course it's not just Peter Thiel, but Peter Thiel is Palantir, you know, and so Cambridge Analytica, and you know, this whole thing, the Koch brothers, the Mercers, but all, you know, APAC in the US, and of course, you know, APAC is what, you know, say you call it the Jewish lobby. The Jewish lobby it's a misnomer. It's an elite owning class. And so it's not race or faith based. It's an entitlement based philosophy of people that believe that they're better than the rest of us. I mean, I used to know an old cab driver, well, an old friend of mine used to own a bar in the East End, and he used to say to think about some people, thing with them, Roger, they think their shit don't stink. I mean, you know, it's and this is the thing. They really do think their shit doesn't stink. You know, whereas most of us are modest and humble enough to realise that we're pretty much the only ones that like the smell of our own farts. But they want to share all of theirs because they think they're lovely. You know, it's just, and that's Musk all over. You know, if you can detect a shred of humility in that man, you're a better man than me.
Well put. Yeah, he doesn't appear to have any. I think the overconfidence thing is that he's got to the point where, you know, by pushing radical parties, and, you know, the bit where he says, I'm going to cut everything in the government.
It's just, it's the same game book, the same game plan that they all do. And it just, how people are falling for it, again, I've no idea. And it begs the question about Donald Trump and his Jacksonian credentials, you know, related to the Fed and all the rest of it. But what they're actually saying is we want to get rid of the Fed and replace it with something much, much worse that we control absolutely. You know, well, so
separate question, okay? Separate question, because I wanted to mention this before it was the wrong time. I haven't read Steve Baker's blog about CPTPP, but I did see the first couple of lines, and I know that you often do read stuff.
I haven't read Steve's blog. I mean, he's
something about CPTPP, and so obviously, as someone who is pro-Brexit, CPTPP is Britain signing up for something. For me, that's just fucking TTIP by another name.
Well, that would be my view too, and I don't know what his view is, and I haven't read it. He gave me a couple of books which I did read. I left them in Wales actually, but
it's the same dynamic. I just meant.
Yeah, I mean, my thought on that, Ranjan, when you bring it up, is that at the time that it was all going, and so in the first Trump presidency, the negotiating team came over, and you know, they leaked the minutes of the negotiations as to what the Americans wanted to do, a separate trade deal with the UK outside of the one that they had with the EU and all the TTIP stuff, right? And what they wanted was the NHS to be basically put on an insurance-based model, and those insurance companies, okay, they're the people behind. Warren Buffett, he owns Geico, it's a great big insurance company. This health company CEO that got shot, a couple of weeks ago, that whole thing. Now, are they going to change it? Are they fuck? You see, Musk to me seems kind of incongruent with what Donald Trump has said and has done. But the big thing about Donald Trump is his main statements, which I've always found worrying, is, well, we had the Iraq War. What's the point of having the Iraq War if we don't steal the oil? Right. And on that basis, on that logic, he could probably justify to himself attacking Iran, which I think is something that's going to happen. But the point about all of that, and this is my point about In Control of Oil, the Blair book, not Tony Blair, the one I've told you about before. It's not Malcolm, it's something else. I always call him Malcolm, but I have no idea why, but it's not Malcolm. But the Blair book, The Control of Oil, yeah, and it was published in I think it was 68, it might have been 78. But anyway, it's a brilliant book. It's absolutely relevant today. Now, I did another blog earlier this month. Donald Trump shining J.R. Ewing's shoes in an advert for Dallas. And of course, this is the thing you see with Trump, is the big oil the big oil finance system dynamic, petrodollar, right? And the point is, there has to be a price support system for a barrel of oil, because the price of the dollar is related to the price of a barrel of oil priced in dollars. Therefore, you would restrict the price of oil to keep the dollar high, not to keep the oil price high. And Trump is in this strange place between understanding that you need energy in an economy too. So drill, baby, drill, right? But you can't drill, baby, drill at will and maintain the price of the dollar. So how do you replace the dollar? Then you get to the 16-to-1 theory, gold, silver. Just wrapping up, the return to the gold standard is the dominant theme. Farage coming back saying he's going to get all this money from Musk buying Farage, BlackRock buying Starmer saying Davos over Westminster every time, right? What are they trying to do? They're trying to usher in a new gold standard based around carbon, whereby it's baked in austerity forever. That's what the EU constitution does. The ECB bakes in austerity in Europe forever. And it is a return to serfdom. So Hayek, although he wrote the Road to Serfdom, I think it would have said it would be more properly titled The Wrong Road to Serfdom, or The Road to the Wrong Sort of Serfdom. But serfdom all the time, because Hayek was an elitist. This is not a libertarian, in my opinion. And this is this is I've not had this conversation with Steve. I'm really looking forward to having it at some point. Because
he's Austrian, isn't he? Yeah.
Well, Hitler was an Austrian too, wasn't he? So
I meant economics.
Yeah. So with you see, I'm down with Schumpeter, right? Who's also an Austrian, but Schumpeter and von Mises didn't get on. Murray Rothbard, who lots of the libertarians absolutely worship, is an absolute charlatan. And von Mises and Rothbard both agreed on something called praxicology, and praxicologists believe that nothing can be explained unless there's a theory, a workable theory about it. So basically, bumblebees can't fly because there's not a theory that supports the flight of bumblebees. And so the joke about that, which Steve Keen cracked, so I'm not going to steal it like he stealed Giannis's leather jacket. So full attribution to Steve for his joke. He says, well, that's all well and good in practice, but does it work in theory? And that's That's what they're like. And that whole thing, von Mises was paid for by the Rockefeller Foundation to study in Chicago and set up the Chicago School of Economics. Then you get to the great big fight between the Chicago School of Economics and the Cambridge School. So this is the brilliant Nitzan and Jonathan Nitzan and classical economics skating on thin ice video, and Piero Safra. And Piero Safra wrote a paper which completely and utterly destroyed the equilibrium model of economics. It doesn't work. And of course, this is another theme, and a theme actually which the guy Sutherland I was telling you about actually says, economics doesn't work, or the theory is completely wrong. And so then that gets into behavioral economics, and then so then back to Steve Baker and his relationship with Paul Dolan, and Paul Dolan is into behavioral economics. And the guy that won the Nobel Prize about 2 or 3 years ago, whenever it was, Steve asked a question, something at the LSE earlier this year, of that guy. And of course, the thing about behavioral economics is right, people do behave, but what about the thumb on the scale? And you get back then to free will, and you get back to determinism. And because you can manipulate people's behavior does not mean they don't have free will. It means that people with free will are capable of being manipulated in doing things against their best interests. That is not an argument or a proof against the existence of free will. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's the anyway. That's where I'm up to. I mean, I think my blog today actually is pretty good. Anyone that read it and then started unfolding it as an algorithm would get somewhere into a. I'm not saying it's right, but what I'm saying is it is authentic. They would get an authentic take on what the fucking hell is going on.
Well, I think they probably also benefit from this video as the little key. But I think.
Well, I'll put the two talks from Sutherland underneath the description of the video. I'll run the video through ChatGPT, and the two Sutherland things. But I'd urge everyone to listen to Catherine's view site to Catherine Austin Fitts interview. Can I just go back to a screen share again, and I'm just gonna just show that one. So start sharing. Here you go. So right, it's this one here, hijacking Bitcoin. Yeah, so it's this video here, hijacking Bitcoin, the hidden history of BTC with Steve Patterson, the full interview. They're often behind a paywall, these things these days. And the other thing I would recommend, and I will put it in the description, is CJ Hopkins and Catherine Austin Fitts. They did a series. It was supposed to be 4, but only 3 came out. Videos called Mr. Globo Cap or something. And they were very, very good. So yeah, CJ Hopkins' blog, Christmas blog, was very funny the other day.
Is he the one who's being constantly tiraded against in Berlin?
Yes, yeah, he got prosecuted and acquitted for having a swastika on the cover of his book, but they basically appealed it or whatever. So he's basically being persecuted as a political dissident against the fascist narratives of both the German state and the EU, unfortunately for him. But it is fascism. But as I say, I mean, Elon Musk is a proto what's the word, a nascent lurch into authoritarian Maoism around you know, cult of personality. One thing that occurred to me, which I didn't jot a note about, was obviously Mark Zuckerberg did try to jump the shark, as it were, when he tried to introduce the currency off the back of Facebook. And I think Zuckerberg was put firmly back in place then. I think he got ahead of his cue. You know,
No, I totally remember that. Yeah, Libra. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what it's all about. And so the whole Bitcoin thing, Catherine says something in her thing, that Bitcoin has depressed the price of gold. Now, I'm not a gold bug, but a lot of these people are. Like Alex Jones is a gold bug. I suspect Farage is as well. I mean, our good friend John at the Slog is I know he invests in gold. Whether you'd call him a gold bug or not, I don't think he believes that the currency should be a hard currency. But it's an interest. You know, it's an asset which you should hedge into if you're into that sort of hedging speculation kind of thing. Which I hasten to add, I'm not. But yeah, there you go. I mean, you know, I personally believe that speculation of that kind is a sin against God. You know, that's my take on it. But, you know, there we are. That's just me. I don't prescribe it for everybody else.
Yeah, you know what you were saying about freedom earlier, and the ostriches and stuff. I remember once, I'm sure I've told you about this before, a few years ago, so quite a while before this guy got a bullet. I was watching CNBC. They have 6 people around a desk in a way that England never does.
Mm-hmm.
You know, political stuff. And the interruption culture is just so much greater in America, which can be really interesting when you watch how the conversation is steered as well. Because in England, you know, it's so much easier for the presenter to just steer it. You know, like, you can speak now, no, you can't. Thank you. They just close people off. Whereas, yeah, in America, interruption culture is like pretty normal. So I remember at one point, the speed that it went from starting to the debate to veering it off into the direction was incredible. It was actually almost just like one punch. One person says this: okay, I believe every American ought to have the best healthcare. And everyone stands up and like waves the flag. Right? So that was like punch one. Next statement came in, said, yes, but should they be free? And that was it. This is how they did it. Should they be free to access, should they be free to choose their own, to choose the best healthcare or not? And that was it. The argument was won by the people that were against universal healthcare, just on that. It's, you know, that's how they, you know, how they say we have to introduce doubt. That was how they did it. They just came in and said, but shouldn't they? I believe they should be, I believe that maybe they should be free to choose their own healthcare. And as in, why should we have a country in which Obama imposes health care upon people who don't want? And it was just absolutely amazing. That was just, you know, this wasn't a big deal. It was just an example of a conversation that was, the freedom was there, but just it went straight down that route immediately, and that's it. Effectively the conversation is over. Just immediately. Amazing.
Yeah, I guess that they've just lost the tools to be able to discuss it properly and give it a proper airing, and that's designed into the system, because it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. I'm reminded of Michael Moore's film about in Trump land, when he does that thing in the theatre. So if you watch the whole thing, he talks about when Hillary Clinton was given the Medicare brief under the Clinton. And actually, I mean, I'm no fan of either Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton, but she did have some good ideas back then about healthcare. And she was absolutely immiserated, you know, for actually expressing them. I mean, they got her the hell out of Dodge pretty damn quick for challenging the healthcare insurance monopolies. And the healthcare insurance monopolies are what the parasitic billionaire elites in the US desperately want to impose on our own National Health Service. And people like Starmer, people like the guy that runs Manchester now, Andy Burnham, who had been brought back in as a consultant, people like Peter Mandelson, people like Tony Blair, they have all had a part in that. And if you look in registers of members' interests and see how many people are actually funded by big American insurance companies or their lobbyists, it's absolutely jaw-dropping quite how deep and financially corrupt that rot has gone into our political establishment. And God only knows, if one tracks back the revolving door between the Department of Health in Whitehall and those organizations, I think you'll find that it's rotten to the core. And that sort of again, employment of the Hegelian dialectic in US talk shows is what actually stops the people in America who know perfectly well that they have a healthcare system which isn't fit for purpose, which is killing innocents every single day. And the parasitic, elitist, billionaire class, the owning class that Pierre Foley says they merely they merely have, that they no longer are. They don't exist in a human context with ethical considerations and empathy for their fellow man. They simply don't. They've lost that, and they consider themselves wealthy. They're the poorest people in the world. They have no they merely have, they no longer are. I mean, you can't put it better than that.
Roger, I think on that, I'll let you do your thing, because, by the way, happy birthday to Rihanna. And have a great day. It sounds like you're
should have a good day. Yeah.
Not that long after Christmas. In which case, I shall catch up with you in person.
For sure, yeah, definitely. I'll look forward to that. We'll go out and have a nice beer. It'd be good to. I really want to meet Ron. Thanks for sending the photos at the Van Gogh exhibition the other day. You showing him around the Van Gogh, as the Americans call it. Was it good?
It was, yeah. I mean, I joined, so it's probably the third or fourth time I've been around, but it was good going around.
Oh, and how was the Globe?
Oh, I really, really enjoyed it. As you know, it was the first.
It was How'd You Like It, wasn't it? You said you went to see.
No, it's All's Well That Ends Well.
Oh, All's Well, right.
You know, it's deemed as a failure in Shakespearean terms as a play, because it's a problem play and it's a comedy. And it's weird because the man is the one who gets married off without any say in the matter. So it's a reversal in that sense. It's got some really good lines in it, but it's only as a result of the fact that I'd listened to a radio version and done some research and read some notes that I was okay. I can understand that other people might have not fully got what was
going on. And did you get to see Coriolanus as well? Because I was so disappointed I didn't have the time to come to that with you. That was at the National, wasn't it?
Yeah, I haven't seen that. But yeah, so it's really kind of like 1 down, 35 to go for me.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to start. Ron told me
when we were kids at school, we went to see A Midsummer Night's Dream. Actually, in Oxford, it was the Oxford students were doing it, because I was at school in Oxfordshire. We went along. It was brilliant. It was out, on one of the quads in the. Absolutely magical it was. Yeah.
One other thing, Ron, as you know, he accesses internet from the library, but every so often now, because he knows that he's likely to meet me on Tuesdays. Not every Tuesday, but he knows I will. He'll sometimes ask Michael, look, is London coming on? But he had photocopied some notes in which there's this passing reference to himself, but the notes were on Mandelson. And for the announcement, because on Tuesday, the head of MI6, Alex Morber or something like that, head of MI6.
I cannot get used to them piping up all the time. I mean, for goodness sake. Whoever told them it was a good idea for them to be in a public eye, it's crazy.
Well, it was even worse than that. It was even worse than that because Ron was pointing to stories where they basically said that they were going to put the head of MI6 in charge of, like, as the US ambassador. He was the other person in the running, and Ron just said, surely that would be completely unprecedented. But so he was mentioning that, but he said that
I just think it's just another example that even those guys are in a state of complete disarray. I mean, they've got the numpties running the show. Honestly, it's well, and of course you would do that, wouldn't you? I mean, if you wanted to, you say, well, corrupt the money, whatever, corrupt the morals, and corrupt the fucking security services as well. Corrupt the arms, but men in dresses running the navy, and narcissists running the security forces. You can't be a spy and a narcissist. It doesn't work.
I'll send you a couple of images of the notes that he wrote.
I'd be interested to see them.
He makes a reference to when Mandelson tried to pass a rumor directly onto Ron, like in person, because Ron was a councillor at Hackney. Mandelson was obviously a North London person.
Oh, I thought Diana Abbott was good in the House of Commons the other day on the Waspy Women.
Right, but anyway, Mandelson tried to.
Speaking of Hackney,
Mandelson tried to spread some rumors directly to Ron in relation to North London FDs, and then Ron made a reference to when MI5 first opened a file on that. So that must be public knowledge. And so he's basically Ron's kind of just thinking, how can this possibly be?
Well, I mean, and his Epstein connections, I mean, the compromat must be significant, I would argue.
It's incredible. I mean, and the fact that, the fact that Trump pardoned his daughter's father-in-law last time, and now he's made him like the cottaging ambassador to America. That's one thing that Mandelson and Charles Kushner have in common, along with John Brown, the former BP guy. Really, like, another level. So I basically said one has to be pro-negative.
So or Dominic Strauss-Kahn, when he's played by Gerard Depardieu in that movie. It's a similar.
Some people said Macron should appoint Dominic Strauss-Kahn as a response as the French ambassador in America. Just a balance. Right, I'll let you do your thing.
Well, they nobbled him so that he couldn't be the head of the IMF, wasn't it? Really, and Christine Lagarde got it instead. Yeah. But there you go.
Well, have a good weekend, and if I don't speak to you, then have a great Christmas, and I'll see you on the other side.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Ranjan. Good talking to you, mate. Take care. Cheers. Bye.